All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of O365A. In this episode, we're going to be doing a 90 Days of Features in 20 Minutes, Volume 2. So last year we did one of these sessions where we covered a lot of different features and functionality within the Microsoft Teams and Microsoft 365 and Office 365 space. So I'm going to pass it off to Dino to start off with the end user side of things.
Great, thanks, Hab. So I'm going to kick it off with read receipts. So read receipts are now turned on by default in Microsoft Teams. So when you send a message either in a one-to-one or group chat, you'll see a check mark to indicate that the message was actually sent. And then when the recipient reads it, you'll get a little that check mark will turn into the shape of an eye, which is kind of clever. And that, of course, indicates that the person's read it. So personally, I love this feature because I think it makes the collab experience much better and doesn't leave you wondering whether the recipients actually read your message or not. If you don't like this functionality, you can turn it off by going to your Teams client and the settings and read receipts and just toggle the feature off. Next up is the ability to pin apps and channels. So this is a new setting to control if users can customize a set of apps in their left rail in the Teams client or their browser, or in your mobile, it's actually at the bottom of your screen for your mobile client. So the setting is turned on by default, and in all tenants, you can control it using the Teams Admin Center under Teams Apps, Setup Policies, Allow User Pinning. And so that just lets the user sort of customize the apps that they pin on the various rails. In terms of pinning channels, you can now pin the channels of a team in your Teams client. So if you got a lot of different teams like I do and many different channels within those teams, you can pin those channels and they appear at the top of your Teams client. So that makes it very handy to get to the channels that you're using on a most frequent basis. To access that feature, just click on the ellipsis menu for any channel and select pin, and it'll bring it right up to the top. Next up is the enhanced scheduling experience in Teams. So Microsoft have improved the meeting scheduling experience in Teams. So you now have an improved view of the available times. You can see suggested times in your when you go to schedule a meeting in the Teams client. The ability to add required and optional attendees is now an option. You have a room picker to select the room. A toggle to set all-day events is now an option. And last but not least, you have a time zone picker, which is very handy for those of us that are challenged at setting times across meeting zones. I know that happens a lot. Up next is the meeting notification settings. So there's 3 new options when joining meetings with respect to meeting toasts. So in the past, if you were joining a meeting and there was like 100 people in it, you were bombarded with toasts even before you joined the meeting. It was kind of annoying. So now you have 3 options. They're muted by default so that you're not getting any of those toast messages appearing in your Teams client. You can have them muted until you join the meeting. So once you join, then you'll start to get those notifications, or you can go completely unmuted so that you always get all notifications, which is what the experience was in the past. So that's another good one. Live captions is next. So this one is a feature that makes meetings more inclusive. I think we talked about this in a previous podcast, and that gives participants another way to follow along in the conversation where they have transcription is showing up in the meeting. So if you're listening to a meeting and English isn't your first language, for example, you could now see what's being spoken on the screen, which is quite amazing. Feature actually works pretty good in terms of it detecting what you're saying. And that's going to start rolling out in preview. I think it's actually rolled out now completely, and English is out for sure. And I know there's plans for other languages coming out in the future. Up next is presenter and attendee controls. So this is the ability to set the meeting attendee roles like we did in Skype, like we had in Skype for Business. So we can now set those options in Teams. So you have everyone as the default can present in a meeting. If you don't change that option, everyone will be able to present in that meeting. You can set it to people in my organization, which is just restricts it to anybody in your company can be a presenter. Specific people you can name named people to be presenters, and then lastly you can select it to only me. So this matches exactly the Skype for Business experience, which is a really welcome feature add. And that's it for me. So I'm going to pass it over to Michael, and he's going to give you a few more end user enhancements and talk about some voice feature functionality updates.
Yeah. So going with the user theme, another big feature that just started rolling out was the ability to take Teams conversations and send them to Outlook. I think the feature is called Share to Outlook. So you can take this from a channel post or a personal chat, and you just click the three dots on the message, and then you can send it to your Outlook. I'm still waiting for the share to Teams from the Outlook side, but it was actually surprising how many people retweeted this post when I noticed this feature in one of my demo tenants. So I guess a lot of people are dying to have this feature. So it was nice to see that kind of roll out of nowhere. Another one is the new file experiences. I think this is probably one of the bigger features that came out this year. Was it was perfect timing for one of the projects I'm on. We were customizing provisioning of Teams, and so now we are able to layer in some customized views and have metadata. You can't enter the metadata right now within the files tab, but I'm sure that's coming. Same with, you can't trigger like Power Automate and hook into Power Apps, but definitely a great first step on that journey for sure, to get that functionality from a native SharePoint page right in the files tab of a channel. Another feature that's probably rolling out in the next couple weeks is tags in Teams, and this is the ability for owners to create their own customized @mention tags that can be used by the members of a team to notify a group of people all at once. So this could be like a subset of the members of a team. So you can say like @operators or @experts or even @managers. And then it will only notify those members that you defined under that tag versus the @channel or @team @mention tags that are kind of built into the team. And then if we take it for as we step into the kind of the admin side, or talking about voice and devices, the admin center has seen a lot of improvements. Now you can manage dial plans, so now you can do number normalizations. You can do a lot of the wizardry that you would do in PowerShell and within the admin center. It's again first steps, but definitely a welcome addition in the admin center. And then the ability to deal with like emergency addresses, emergency policies around calling and routing policies. So all that dynamic 911 information, ability to create, notification policies. So if someone dials 911, maybe it alerts a help desk or security desk. So that's all now within the admin center. And then we're also seeing updates around auto attendance and call queues. So in auto attendance, you can redirect a voicemail. So the UI for creating these call queues in auto attendance has been improved. And then if we take a little bit further down the voice path, there's some new devices coming that have come out. So there's the Lenovo ThinkSmart View. It's similar to like a collaboration bar where it's like an Android device, but it's a personal device. It's meant to sit on your desk. It doesn't have an HDMI out, but it does have a screen and audio and video kind of built into the device. It's pretty unique. I don't have one of those devices, so I haven't had a chance to play with it. But another device that just came out is the Poly CCX handsets, which I do have one of these. Just came in today, so I'm not sure if we can get it on the video, but I look forward to putting that through its paces. So Lenovo, send me something. No, but maybe I'll throw it over to Kurt, and you could talk about the center.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So on the theme of administration, there was about 5 noteworthy things that are new on the admin front. First off is the Microsoft 365 Usage Analytics Power BI dashboard. And this is the next generation of the Office 365 content adoption pack, if anyone's used that. And this is a separate Power BI dashboard that you can install, and it pulls data, a bunch of information from your tenant, and it gives you all sorts of adoption and usage metrics right across all the Office 365 workloads, such as how many people are using OneDrive, Teams, Yammer, SharePoint. For certain workloads, it even drills into the percentage of users that are active. So this is great for measuring adoption and figuring out in your organization whether your expectations are being met in terms of rolling out these workloads. Another one is EDU policy packages. So in Microsoft Teams, you have a lot of different policies. There are policies which govern features for calling, features for messaging, for meetings, for live events. And configuring all these policies for all the individual users or even groups inside your organization can be quite challenging. So Microsoft came up with this notion of policy packages, which are currently only available in EDU tenants right now. And these policy packages are predefined policies and settings that can be customized for different groups of roles of people inside your tenant. So if we look at the education example, you might have a policy package for teachers and a separate policy package for students, which have settings in those policies which restrict or enable certain features based on what you want to enable or disable. Also, there's a join Teams notification, new feature. This is in Microsoft Flow, of course, now called Power Automate, which allows Power Automate to know when someone has joined Teams. And this can light up several scenarios in Power Automate. Most notably is the welcome message. So when a colleague joins Teams, you can easily set up a flow to send a welcome message, maybe some instructions on adoption, where to go for certain information. Another one was more on the SharePoint side, but related to Teams, was the ability to move SharePoint sites to a new location. This should have been rolled out in late 2019. This allows SharePoint Online administrators to be able to move sites between locations within an Office 365 tenant. And administrators can move to the location of an existing site. So, for example, you can move a modern site to become the root of a classic site, for example. So this can be really useful if you're restructuring SharePoint sites or Teams. And you do this through PowerShell, quick search, and you can find the PowerShell module in the commandlet. And initially, when it was rolled out, it targeted tenants with greater than 1,000 users. I think that's still the case, but I think there was plans to roll it out to all tenants. And then also, there was some talk of Chrome version 80, an issue with Microsoft Teams, where once users have entered their credentials into a Teams app on the sign-in page, they'd get caught in this continuous cycle of re-entering your credentials and being redirected back to the Teams app sign-in page. So right now, I think they're looking at that, and the guidance right now is to just use the desktop client if that's a problem. But stay tuned for updates on that one. So that's it from the admin point of view. I'll turn it over to Habib to talk about some security enhancements.
Yeah, thanks, Kurt. So from a security and compliance perspective, there's 4 new features that have come out. Obviously, with the introduction of private channels last year, a lot of the compliance functionality was already there. However, legal hold capability was not, right? So being able to have, being able to, put some litigation around the private channels and the messaging in case you needed that kind of information, if there's a specific case for it, so that that is welcomed into this new security enhancement. ATP safe links. So in Teams chat messages and channel messages now, you being able to utilize the ATP safe links functionality that you generally use or get in with ATP and email, where if a user clicks on a link, it checks against websites or domains or information that could be harmful within the actual link itself. And as you know, you hope that, your end users are not being malicious, and who knows, these, the people creating these things are becoming more and more resourceful. And, you never know if they can, put something on your machine that can, start putting these messages within your chats and channel messages. So it's great addition to stop the end user from continuing on to that malicious link, which will block them from going to that location. Another new feature, I believe, I'm not sure if it's still, I don't think it's in preview. I think it's in public now, which is communication compliance. It's a new capability in the compliance.microsoft.com admin center, where it's part of the new insider risk solution that M365 gives you, so you can help minimize the risks and detect remediation, for inappropriate messages or things within the organization. So it helps obviously scan communication with communication channels, increased volume of messages. So there are also regulatory enforcements. So it comes out of the box with 3 different policies. One is corporate policy, which employees must comply with. So, it helps, as an example, HR could scan communications in the organization for concerns about harassment or inappropriate language or offensive languages. Risk management, as an example, scanning messages for unauthorized information about projects, mergers, acquisitions, and so on. So, you want to make sure that, that stuff stays under wraps. And then from a regulatory compliance perspective, such as FINRA, ensuring that your organization is still compliant with those type of messaging from a compliance. It also helps safeguard, from money laundering, insider trading, collusion, bribery activities. Out of the box, it does come with some intelligent templates that you can utilize and customize them, along with some machine learning support to help with that, scanning from the messaging perspective. And then obviously the last part of that is the remediation. So there's out of the box workflows that will help, pick up on certain messaging and items within the scans to help block it and notify specific people, and then obviously create cases and stuff like that. So that's a new functionality that's coming into the compliance.microsoft.com. And then lastly is the security defaults replacing the baseline protection policies. So the baseline protection policies by default were in the conditional access location and were disabled by default. But it provided a list of different security features that you should enable to secure your organizations. Microsoft has noticed that a lot of those baseline functionality or baseline protection policies were never enabled, and so a lot of the companies were still at risk for those issues. So what they're doing is they're deprecating the baseline protection policies. The recommendation is they're really good policies. The recommendation is, before they get removed from your tenant, is to create those policies in conditional access and keep them disabled, but it should be pretty easy to replicate. And then these security defaults will take into place where it's an all or nothing enablement for your organization. So it's an on or off switch for your organization. I think by default it's coming as on, as Microsoft noted. They've turned it on for roughly over 60,000 tenants so far. And really those requirements in there, I think the top 3 are requiring all users and admins to register for MFA, challenging users with MFA when they show up on a new device or application, and then disabling authentication from legacy authentication clients which can't do MFA. So that's it from the security and compliance side of things. So a few new features there, and a lot of other features from the end user voice and administrative side of things. So a lot of good stuff that has come out. I think it's important to stay on top of things because everything is forever changing. So I think it's a great topic session, guys. Here, always try and keep everybody up to date. And I guess thanks everybody for listening in, and hopefully we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.